The satyr that outmondos them all. Taboos of the world. 100 hidden cameras bring you horrors and highlights. Beauty and bestiality. The sacred and profane. A 6666 picture. Taboos of the world in color.
We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
I know they're gonna kiss me, but don't let anyone see me like that. Please, Doctor, help me!
Biologically speaking, it's of primary importance that man should want to mate. Hey, that's...
You don't get all your kicks from surfing, do you?
We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
You think you're gonna make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first!
The American International Podcast.
Are you ready?
Welcome to what may prove to be a very unusual episode of the American International Podcast. I'm Jeff Markin.
And I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And on this episode, we will be exploring the taboos of the world through Taboos of the World from 1965.
Taboos of the World was directed by Romolo Marcellini, written by Giancarlo Del Rey and Ugo Guerra, that's the commentary, with a story by Ugo Guerra, Jacques Lansmann, Virginio, Lilli, and Romolo Marcellini. It was produced by Guido, Giambartolomei.
And the original AIP cut was narrated by Vincent Price. But unfortunately, the original AIP cut was not available to us. If anybody has it out there, we would love to take a look at it, so hit us up. We were able to track down an English narrated version, but we don't know who this narrator was.
Nobody does. No credits are available anywhere. Taboos of the World opens up with a dead body lying on the side of the road as trucks and carts drive past it. And the voiceover tells us what a taboo is and how what is forbidden in one culture might be A-OK in another. The narrator says, our cameras have unlocked the secret doors that surround the mysterious world of taboo.
Then after the title and the roll of the credits, we get right into the taboos. First, we are introduced to the world of the Bonzes and the initiation ceremony for some Buddhist monks. We watch as they're preparing for this new life for themselves. They have to shave their heads and eyebrows to make themselves physically unattractive and then renounce all worldly interests. They have to think of themselves as one with their God and not of man.
Or woman.
And even if a monk's mother was to visit, she's allowed to do so as long as she brings gifts of reverence and he cannot acknowledge her in any way. A smile is forbidden, and they demonstrate this by putting a fan over his face so he doesn't break.
Aw. And then we transition to Japan, where wandering street singers in kabuki makeup play as the narrator describes the state of marriage in that country at that time. We see a family of 4, dad, mom, sister, and brother, walk across busy streets, waving flags that signal that drivers shouldn't run into them. No flag? Too bad. You can be flattened. And now on to the actual taboo of this story. Men's sexuality is not regulated in Japan. Case in point, this family outing that we're seeing today is a shopping expedition for getting Mr. Matsuka, that's who the narrator tells us the man is, a concubine. He's going to take her on his upcoming business trip. Fun. And the wife is totally on board with this. He must really suck in bed, is my conclusion. Anyway, the wife has to choose well because she will get all the blame if she picks a bad concubine. Yikes. The narrator tells us that in Japan, women grow up knowing that men are the only gender that matters, and that women's only role in all of their life is to serve men. Sign me up for that. The wife gives a list of care and feeding instructions to the concubine that they've chosen, and then she sees her husband and his temporary mistress off on the train. Men seem especially useless here.
Next, we find ourselves on the coast of the Arabian Sea, where the narrator tells us that one of humanity's earliest taboos is accepted as a way of life. And we're introduced to the crew of the ship called Sambuki. It's a small cargo ship, and the younger boys serve as housewives, as the narrator puts it, on these ships, performing all domestic duties.
Yeah, I can imagine other duties as well.
The narrator also talks about how, during their off time, these housewives have a little time for gossiping and exchanging recipes.
I don't think that's true. I love how they said there's no women in this culture, but somehow there's young boys. I don't know where they came from.
Yeah, it says in these little communities where no women exist, hundreds of years of custom have so lightened the sense of sin that these boys have no sense of shame about their way of life. But at least when they turn 18, they'll become regular crew members and there'll be other young men to take their place.
I guess they can stop wearing makeup at that point, too. Now we're in what the narrator calls a Muslim temple, and we're witnessing a no-fault Multiple fault? Divorce. Anyway, it's dead easy to do this. The husband is being counseled by a Qadi, who's a religious figure, on how to save his marriage, but the husband isn't having it. The wife has literally no say. She's wearing a burqa, and she's not allowed to speak a word in her own defense. The husband repeats, "I repudiate you" 3 times, and it's all over. He's no longer married, and neither is she.
And the woman, veiled as she is, no one can see her face, so no one knows if she weeps, if she is still young and attractive, or aging and tired.
Well, I'm sure she's not happy. She didn't get to say a word.
And then we visit the much colder climate of Sweden, and the women there are noted for wearing far fewer clothes than their sisters in warmer lands. We are also told that Sweden is the only country in the world where newsstands can distribute magazines carrying pictures of totally naked women.
That seems odd. It's 1964 and Playboy magazine exists. It's not on newsstands?
Anyway, I don't think these are everyday women. They just happen to be models. And the narrator talks about how they make their living off of other people's modesty. And they're paid well for this too. And they show one girl who is working toward her first mink stole by wearing only one piece of clothing. You can guess where.
Oh, it's a French maid's apron. And just to mention, this is Sweden and it's winter. They're doing a photo shoot in the snow. So she's really earning those bucks. I don't begrudge her one dime. Now something for the ladies, men with almost no clothes. In India, there's a group of holy men. They're divided into 2 divisions. The seniors are called Guru, and the juniors are called Sadhu. They aren't allowed to own clothes, as their god already gave them something to clothe their souls, skin. However, they are allowed to wear thongs and pouches, for modesty's sake, I guess. These men carry tritons. The 3 prongs of the triton represent the 3 gods in one that they worship. They begin life as hermits, and they become wanderers after that, going through the cities and towns as a group.
And speaking of cities and towns, we're next going to visit a smaller town in the Japanese province of Kyoto, where we get to peek in on a hot public bath. The narrator tells us that nudity isn't anything to be ashamed of here, as we're watching a family bathe together, and that if a Westerner was to come in wearing a swimsuit, everybody would flee the bath immediately because they would wonder what deformity this person must be hiding under that.
What does your butt look like? It's a very cozy, even romantic daily ritual. And then the narrator mentions something about the inscrutable Oriental types that kind of made me go gag. Now we're back in India, but we're with some Muslim women. There they wear the purdah or burqa. That's what it looked like to me, because no man may see their unclothed face except for their husbands. It's a great leveler of beauty, says the narrator. The ugly women have the same chances in the dating market as the attractive ones. They're assuming that no one ever looks at the woman under the veil before the wedding day, and for all I know, that's true.
And now we find ourselves in Central Europe, where we are introduced to the founders of a new type of religion, the Children of the Sun, which is trying to rid themselves of the taboo of nakedness. The pictures we see show people clothed, but the narrator assures us that those clothes will be removed soon.
They're also saying that this nudist colony doesn't want to be filmed, so they are there in express contempt for their wishes not to be filmed. It's so edgy of them. Our next stop is Japan, again, at a tattoo parlor, where here it is illegal. Tattoos are called the kimono of the flesh. It's something you have to build up a tolerance for. You start with half an hour and you build up to a 1.5 hour session, which is the maximum limit, because it's so painful, and the ink is kind of toxic. There's a long recovery period afterwards, and many have died before their tattoo was completely healed. Also, it's something that prostitutes use to advertise the services that they render. And the narrator tells us that the only way to get rid of these tattoos is to be skinned alive.
And speaking of skinned alive, we are now going to Szechuan in southern China, where we learn that fried or boiled python is a delicacy.
Tell us more.
The narrator says it probably tastes like octopus, which tastes a bit like sautéed eel.
If you say so.
So if you like eels, you'll be crazy about python. And then we watch as this python is literally skinned alive. It's slit down the center of its entire body and the skin is peeled off as the gleeful children look on.
They seem pretty happy. Bad luck for that poor snake, though, because it takes a while. The skin just doesn't peel off like a banana peel. It has to be stretched and pulled, and you hear every gross sound. Ugh. And once the snake is peeled, it gets boiled and carved up, and everybody enjoys a section of it. And we bounce back to Japan at a witch doctor's shop. I think we're in for more animal abuse. We learned what the witch doctor makes his potions out of. Monkey skulls and monkey faces are part of the recipe. And there are more snakes. 2 regular non-python snakes are beheaded, and the heads do not die right away. They're still hissing as they lay on the counter. That's actually kind of funny because all the sound in this is going to be done in post. This is all silent footage. So the snake opens its mouth and goes, just like you did. And then their bodies are drained of blood to make a tonic to renew male vigor, for which there is a money-back guarantee if you're willing to cop to spending a fortune on snake blood and still not being able to get it up. So the narrator tells us that, tired of all this abuse, the animals will want to leave the towns and cities, countryside and mountains, and settle down in India, where at least some animals are treated with more respect. Specifically, cows. They don't eat cows in India. For the Indians, the cow is a living taboo, a 4-footed idol which must be made the object of deep respect and humble love. They also randomly molest them in the street. Touch them in the street. Yeah, cows are allowed to roam the streets, and anyone who comes across them is encouraged to touch, not stroke, but just touch them. It's hard to tell the difference. And then they bring their fingers to their forehead or lips. They have monuments and temples erected to cows, and people often bring flowers and other offerings. And in some of the temples, the cows are allowed to intermingle with people who collect their organic fluids. Oh, yuck. Because these are believed to have healing properties. So, cow piss. And people do encourage cows to visit their homes. And if they do, this is a great honor. So the cow is fed and treated as one of the family, or maybe even better than one of the family, for the length of its visit. Yeah, they anoint the cow's forehead with oil and drape it with flowers. But down at the other end of the cow, India's source of fuel is revealed to be a cow dung collection facility. Here, everything is done by hand, which means scooping the dung and kneading it and forming it into bricks. But this is only a job for women. Yay, progress? These dung bricks are also used to cover the huts that people live in. The narrator makes a dig at the state of India's dung dwellers, saying while most of the rest of the world is using its resources to conquer the moon, India is here living in dung huts. Yikes. And from there, we traverse north to Lapland, where they have no cows, but they do have reindeer. And the reindeer is useful for the Laplanders, the hide for warmth, and the meat for nourishment. And another thing is their blood has some uses too. We see an older gentleman popping a vein of a reindeer, putting his mouth to it, and drinking freely of whatever oozes out. It turns out that reindeer blood is a known aphrodisiac to these people. Seems like a lot of men in this world are flaccid on their own. Now we find ourselves at an emporium called Sex Drugs. What, no rock and roll? What goes on here? I'll tell you. We're in Yokohama, Japan, where Dr. Akafumi is discreetly assisting men who need help with, you guessed it, impotence. The doctor has a confessional booth type setup where the men privately describe their issues, and then they show their faces to get the cure. Once we open the curtain, we look at a guy whose problem might be more homeliness than impotence, but I'm no doctor. The cure is not snake or animal blood for once. It's just a little bit of medicine that fits in a small box that's small enough to put in his pocket. No one has to know that he can't get it up. And the price is only $1. Next, we visit the temples of Khajurano. And this is the only segment that we have Vincent Price narration for because it was included in the trailer. Not on our movie, though. We just have to imagine it. And these temples are significant because most of the temples were destroyed 5 centuries earlier by Muslim invaders. But these ones, quote unquote, escaped the wrath of the children of Allah. Oh, boy. And this place is fun for the whole family. Yeah, people bring their children to see these relief carvings that express a number of different sexual positions. Hindus believe in exposing their kids to depictions of physical love, says the narrator. It's as necessary as grass and sunshine. So it works as a combination of church and a museum of natural history. And a lesson in how babies are made. Speaking of sex education, we're now in Sweden where what looks like high school or college-age kids are learning sex ed. They probably should have done that 5 to 8 years earlier, but at this age, it's really not that provocative. Here, though, the teacher is using the overcrowded and overpopulated state of India as a cautionary tale. And because of this, the people of Sweden have learned that they must only produce as many children as there is room and money for. Can't argue with that. And now we are visiting the famous cages of Bombay.
where love is for sale.
That ain't love, buddy.
This is a house of prostitution where the women inside catcall to the people passing by with the hopes of making a living.
It's not just women, though. It's girls, too. There's a little footage from inside, but it's very grainy and you can't tell what's happening.
Yeah, we're told that they have to take this footage from a truck across the street. So in their state of poverty, this is their only hopes of having any type of life whatsoever, even though it's not much of a life. They are basically trapped to this existence, and their only hope of escape is death. And we are told that the youngest of these women will only charge 1 rupee, which comes to less than 20 cents, at least in 1965, for 1 hour of pleasure.
These cages display the women for sale, but only the youngest and most beautiful of the girls. The older and ugly ones have to stay inside.
And as these women age, they have no choice but to become servants for their younger colleagues.
With death, the only release from this tragic accident of their birth. And the narrator compares the noise of sex and seduction to the hellish sounds from Dante's Inferno.
And then the cameras did manage to get inside, where we are shown one fortunate woman being wrapped in a shroud and prepped for burial.
Or whatever they do. But now we're with the ladies who lunch in Polynesia. A group of 50-something white women on a girls' trip are having a luau. They are merry widows indeed. But then one of them tries to molest a male server by grabbing him under his skirt. Then she starts chasing him as he understandably runs away. But just when you want to start painting this woman as the villain, we hear the patronizing narrator consigning her to a life of garden club meetings, trips to the supermarket, and grandmotherhood. Did J.D. Vance write this? The narrator makes up some crap about her trip being a disappointment, but all we see is a bunch of women enjoying themselves romping in the surf. He's putting words in their mouth saying, talking about the natives, you've never seen such savages.
Next we visit Hong Kong. Once known as the Forbidden City, Hong Kong has recently taken on a more respectable air, we're told. And we're presented with several of the professions here. The oldest profession exists, and the girls have been forced to pretend they have regular jobs.
Well, it has to be a respectable front to a seedy business.
So you might find them shining shoes as their front.
And they really do shine them.
But unfortunately, a large percentage of Hong Kong males go around in sandals.
Uh-oh. Now the narrator introduces us to the exotic concept of massage parlors. Ever heard of those? Oh wait, this is a real massage parlor. The narrator says there's no soft feminine invitation from a business manipulator. At least who wrote this stuff? If tourists want illicit sex, they need to head to the villages.
They would only find disappointment here.
They get massaged. What else do they want?
Next, we're introduced to a family. It's an older woman and her granddaughters. They all seem happy, but...
It's a big but.
They all seem happy. The children are smiling, but there is something horrible going on here. This woman is the girl's grandmother, and she and her grandchildren are available for rent by the hour. The older girl is 14, and the younger is only 7.
At this point, I wrote down that I am so done with this movie. The girls look so sweet and adorable, and it just sickened me to think what was going to be done to them, what had been done to them. So let's move on. Now we're in Switzerland, where children run the small town they live in because both of their parents work. These original latchkey kids wear their house keys on ribbons around their neck. However, they're so disciplined that they only eat the allocated amount of Swiss chocolate per day, which is readily available there, of course. And they do their homework unsupervised.
What more could they possibly want except maybe a mother and father at home?
Well, careful what you wish for.
Next, we see a woman in labor, but unfortunately, it's not going to be a successful birth. This woman, while a baby herself, is a survivor of the bombing of Hiroshima. And then we're shown several of the children of the survivors, and all of them have genetic mutations.
It's very sad and hard to watch. So let's move on again. Now we're in Scandinavia with some juvenile delinquents. They're called Rhagar here, but you might know them as teddy boys elsewhere.
I'd call them ruffians.
Well, whatever you call them, they're up to no good. They, I guess we're talking about the boys, hang their trophies on the hoods of their cars. And we see that their trophies consist of bras and panties. They have outdoor orgies and they terrorize the villages. Not even the police can stop them. The girls mock the police by standing in front of them and taking off all their clothes. And the police can do nothing, I guess.
No, stop. Don't take off your clothes.
I don't know what their goal is, but they're not accomplishing it. The police are blocking them from getting, I guess, to the town or village. But if they can't get in this way, they're going to go down the street and try to get in elsewhere.
And so ends another battle in the war between authority and rebellious youth that goes on continually.
It will never stop.
Next, we see men being trained in the science of karate. And upon their graduation, they will be experts in the art of judo. Fortunately for the cameras here, they do their training right in the streets, so anybody can watch. They do one exercise to strengthen the stomach muscles. They're all laid down while another walks across them, and they're supposed to put their legs and head up off the ground and keep them there as their stomachs are tread upon.
They also show the students with their arms behind their back, crouched down and hopping through the streets.
We're told that they've already been trained in the 3 deadly strokes of judo, the blow under the nose, at the throat, and the back of the head. And while it's forbidden for them to actually use these moves, just knowing that they can use them in a pinch gives them a real sense of confidence.
The narrator tells us that they're like modern-day samurai. And speaking of samurai, wounded World War II samurai must beg for help on the streets. They were soldiers during the war and among the few who survived.
They're also the only people that are licensed to beg on the streets.
But even though they are authorized, people don't really seem to care about them, even when they're playing a jaunty tune on their accordion. Then the vets join the rest of the people at the temple for the goddess of health, looking for healing if that's in the cards. One group of veterans plays volare to an unappreciative street audience.
Next, we're told that no survey of taboos in the East would be complete without a glimpse of the country that has become a taboo itself. We are on the Chinese border at the former country of Macau.
It's now a district of China.
There's not much to this segment because the city is behind a wall, but we are shown sentry keeping guard to make sure that no one ventures out from the other side of that wall.
That's compared to East Germany, the wall that used to exist there. And there are escapees. There are escapes attempted every night, but successful escapees have formed a village that's in view of the sentry post guarding the walled city. And now, welcome to the opium den. Is this sad? Yes. Yes, it is. But while these dope fiends are smoking, there are masseurs on duty to invigorate them. We're told that they smoke opium and cigarettes alternatively because it makes the opium better. We spend a little time here, luckily not too much. These people seem lost forever to their addiction.
Next, we venture into the city, where we see a simple teenager lying on a bench, lighting a quote-unquote drug cigarette. From there, they can drift into a world that accepts them and offers them freedom. They can look out into the world and see it differently. But unfortunately, the smoking of marijuana is illegal, and the partakers do it so openly that arrest is expected eventually, so they serve their time and then go back and do it again.
They stay till they're not high anymore, and then they get out. Now we're in Sweden, in front of the King's Palace in Stockholm, where a worker or a volunteer feeds about 7 million swans swimming in a lake. There is a lot. And for some reason, this is listed among the taboos of the world.
And since we're talking about animals, next we're going to visit a white elephant, which is a symbol of purity to the Buddhists. The elephants are well cared for, and because an elephant has a lifespan of over 100 years, it can go through 3 or 4 caretakers over the course of its life. And we're told that the elephant shows signs that he misses his caretakers after they're gone.
Now let's look at some other caretakers of animals. We're in Scandinavia, where women take care of their horses the way that men used to, we're told. And apparently the way men used to involves kissing them on the lips. The narrator tells us that, unlike human clients, horses don't take these kisses the wrong way, even though they're basically Frenching.
Next, we're introduced to the performers of a Hawaiian nightclub act. They're doing the normal performance, but they're not in the club, they're out on the beach, entertaining themselves. They originally came from Fiji and haven't found themselves welcome on the Hawaiian Isles due to cultural differences. So they go out on their own to perform this ritual, and luckily the Taboos of the World cameras are there to capture it.
We see a very lovely woman dancing, and she really seems to be enjoying this rare bit of freedom. And then we go somewhere up north, and the only taboo here is that artificial flowers have replaced the natural blooms which don't grow there. Just a little brief one.
But in Nagoya in Japan, the flowers are real and made part of a special day known as the Festival of Love. There's a parade with stars, kites, dragons, and music, all designed to honor lovers. It's common for a girl to receive and maybe even expect a proposal from her man. And the narrator tells us that despite the dragons floating all around, which could remind the young man of his future mother-in-law,
And now we're in the last scene, finally. It looks like we're in India, where a mass is being held in the chapel of a leprosarium, which is a place where lepers live. As the mass is being conducted, we're told that for many of these people, their faith is their only reason for living. And then everyone takes communion. And that is our last taboo of the world. Or is it?
This is the American International Podcast, where we're discussing Taboos of the World from 1965.
There's at least 2 or 3 versions of this movie out there, and the Italian version has several scenes that aren't in the American version. We're going to talk about 2 of them because they're featured in the trailer for Taboos of the World, the English version. The first one is film of the Well of Death Challenge in India. Fortunately for us, this version that we watched is in widescreen, and the color is a lot richer here. But unfortunately, it's only in Italian without subtitles. However, we're just going to tell you what we interpreted from what we saw. We're seeing a tall tower with a hole in the center of it, and men going up there to jump through the hole and falling several stories to a pool of water below. And people just do this over and over again, unless somehow they die.
The second segment that was featured in the trailer, but not in the English language version of Taboos of the World that we had available to us, involved a secret society in Japan. The members wear hoods to hide their identities, or maybe that's just for the benefit of the camera. It's in Italian, so I can't tell you. But the initiation ceremony involves the sacrifice of your own pinky. You have to cut it off yourself. But the one that was shown did seem to have a little help.
And the funny part is, as the helper is pounding on the sword to cut the finger, they put in sound effects of a timpani. So it's badoing, 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 and then the finger comes off.
And apparently, from what I've seen, the phalanges are then pickled and preserved.
I guess you get a souvenir to take home with you, now that you're in the club. Taboos of the World was released in Italy on December 5th of 1963 as I Taboo. In West Germany, it came out on May 2nd, 1964 as Die Taboos der Welt. And in the United States, it was released in April of 1965 as the second feature on a double bill with, of all movies, Beach Blanket Bingo.
Interesting choice there.
Yeah, I told Jeff when we were researching this, 1 month later, War Gods of the Deep, starring Vincent Price, came out. Would that not make a better first feature for Taboos of the World with Vincent Price narrating?
That's arguable, but I don't think it'd be any worse. The AIP press book for Taboos of the World suggested that theater owners rent a fleet of convertibles and create their own parade, with each different car representing a different taboo as seen in the film. Also, among the ideas was to put signs in every mirror singing, "A look in this mirror shows you reality, but Taboos of the World reveals the naked truth," with pictures and descriptions of scenes from the film tacked to the glass. Lastly, they recommended hiring a tattoo artist to set up shop in the lobby, or just have a tattooed person on display to generate interest.
I want to see the parade where one of the cars represents child prostitution. Taglines for Taboos of the World include, "So you think you've seen everything."
You can believe what your eyes see.
Face the truth of other worlds.
See Laplanders drink reindeer blood.
Is sex the same the world over?
It's the film that starts where the other Mondo pictures chickened out.
It's the picture that out-Mondos them all. I guess they had sort of a beef against the Mondo movies?
I guess Mondo Cane was kind of a big hit, so they had all these copycat films coming out. And Taboos of the World, fortunately for us, was one of them.
Or unfortunately.
Box Office Magazine wrote that this shocking documentary of how the other half lives should have been an irresistible appeal to American curiosity seekers. Obviously, chosen for shock value, some of the camera's lingering seems unnecessary, such as the pinpointing of blood dripping from a self-amputated finger, or the severed head of the snake. Erotica of the East is passed over quickly and may prove disappointing to those expecting shocking sexual rituals. One is forced to admit that the presentation is educational, if not enjoyable.
The LA Times wrote in their review that once again, human suffering and ignorance are exploited, and exotic customs patronized to make a quick buck. As usual, the result is a large dose of grisly and pointless trash. Horror film star Vincent Price serves as narrator. He tries to bring wit, compassion, and taste to this shapeless, shoddy footage, but it is a task doomed from the outset.
The original Italian version ended up on VHS in the 1980s with an uncredited British actor dubbing Vincent's narration. We were able to find an English version of this, but I don't believe that the narrator is British.
No, I don't think so. He sounds American, and from what we could tell, the narration didn't change. It's just a different person reading it.
Again, we only have that one clip of Vincent's voice from the trailer to go by, but that was the same word for word.
And if you want to try and find it, well, good luck. No copies of the English language version from the 60s have ever turned up, but like us, you could probably find the 1980s redub somewhere.
Now, Taboos of the World wasn't the only venture into the world of Mondo films, though it probably is the most famous.
There was a sequel. Taboo 2 became Macabro.
And that was released by AIP Armed Trans-American Films.
And it's not possible to find that, as far as we know.
Yeah, we have not been able to track down even an Italian version of that one. So again, if somebody has access, let us know, because we'd like to cover it on the podcast one day.
In a similar vein, the movie Naked Africa was released by AIP in 1957, although it didn't do the jumping around the world looking at different customs tour that Taboos of the World did.
1963, AIP handled distribution for LCR Films' release of Echo, and also The Wild, Weird, Wonderful Italians was part of a television package for AITV.
We already mentioned Macabro, which came out in 1966, but it was followed by Sadismo from Trans-American Films in 1967.
Also in 1967, some other films kind of in the same vein were Spree from Trans-American Films. That is best known today as being a lost film and featuring Jane Mansfield, and it's about the nightlife in Las Vegas. And another in 1967 was Teenage Rebellion, which seems to be about the hippie movement.
Well, it's the right time. And then we have Witchcraft 70, which came out in 1969, also from Trans-American Films.
And lastly, Africa Uncensored came out in 1971 from Trans-American Films. Now, a lot of these movies are considered lost films today, and I guess the reason for that is because this footage was licensed and not really shot by the cameras of Taboos of the World and whatever, and that might be a reason that a current-day release would be complicated.
It's also very exploitative. I'm sure there are a lot of people who would love to see it, but it's going to be hard to market with the footage that we have.
Well, of all those films that I mentioned, Echo had a DVD release from Something Weird way back when, and in the last few years, it was put out as a partnership between Something Weird and Severin Films. So that one is available. So it's not impossible, but it's likely that particular one has fallen into public domain, whereas some of these other ones have not. And I theorize that that's the reason why Taboos of the World hasn't been released at all, because with Vincent Price's narration, at least as a curiosity, you would think that one would have some legs.
I was really surprised that we couldn't find it on the internet anywhere. Nobody's even claiming that they have it or had it.
If you read some of the reviews on IMDb or Letterboxd, it seems like some people out there may have seen this with the Vincent Price narration.
Well, we have two versions of it, and it's
frustrating.
Yeah, it is. It would be great if Sam Markoff had saved a print of all of his movies and stored them properly. That would be amazing.
So since this is kind of an offbeat film, we weren't able to dig up a whole lot about it. So I guess there's nothing left but to discuss our own feelings on this. So tell me how much you loved Taboos of the World, Cheryl.
I felt really gross watching this, to be honest. Well, on one hand, some of these so-called taboos seem so harmless and innocuous. They had no business being in this movie. But the ones that did, I felt like a voyeur looking at people who, even the narration says, don't want to be filmed, and watching them in some of the most stressful and horrible points of their lives. And then the way the narrator goes on about how the prostitutes in the cages, their life is hopeless and they have nothing to look forward to but death. And the fact that somebody's making money off these pronouncements, or did, it doesn't sit well with me.
But even as shocksploitation, you have to think that this is technically a documentary. So these are things that, at least according to the film, and film can be very manipulative, these are things that actually happen. And is it necessarily a bad thing that a culture is different? It might look wrong in our eyes, and it might be wrong. But if their culture looks at it as not wrong, who are we to say that this is not good?
It's not what we're seeing, it's how what we're seeing is being treated that bothers me the most. Yes, every culture is different. There are some things that I think are just wrong, and it doesn't matter what culture you're in. Prostituting children, these people are so poverty-stricken that they have no choice. I understand that. But to have that presented as a curiosity for people to look at and cluck their tongues and then go on to the next one, like it's just another slide in your vacation pictures, it doesn't sit well with me. I don't like being the voyeur who's watching that. A good documentary is going to get in and talk to these women. They're going to find out what their lives are really like. It's not going to be some guy saying, well, I guess they just have to wait for death. Is that true? We don't know. Whoever wrote this is just making stuff up. It's what audiences want to hear as far as they know. They're not giving us any truths here. We're just at a peep show.
Well, that's what the point of shocksploitation is. It's just to present this and present shock. You're not supposed to agree. It's just supposed to be something you don't know. And isn't that odd?
I know. Like I said, I understand what's happening. I just don't like the writing. Let's just put it that way. What's being written, talking about the women on the beach in Hawaii and how they're these sad middle-aged women who have nothing to look forward to, and putting words in their mouth about how they view the savages that are on the island. They didn't interview anybody for that. They just made that up. That's the reason I don't like this movie, is because of the narration. That's my main objection. If we are looking at scenes from other cultures and customs that we're not aware of, if somebody's actually talking to those people and getting their insights, that's one thing. That's interesting. But just observing, like, oh, look at these weirdos and their strange customs, they're not like us, that's just very off-putting.
I can't even imagine how disappointed you would be if it had Vincent Price narrating it then.
I know. It seems almost better that we didn't have to hear that. But I know he didn't write it either, so can't blame him. He's just an AIP shill. And yeah, was it 60 years ago that this movie came out, and attitudes are different. I'm not a product of the generations that made that movie. I'm one of the children of the people that made that movie, so to speak. And things have changed. We don't look at people the same way, or we're not supposed to, like animals in a zoo anymore.
Right. So like a lot of the films we watch, it's a product of its time.
Yeah. And we do try to make allowances while holding our nose the whole time. And then just on a purely personal note, the scene of the snake being skinned alive was stomach turning. Nothing else really grossed me out. Not even the other snakes being beheaded and drained of blood.
Well, it was so much quicker. I think it's just the length that this took was what it was.
Because sound effects. Ugh. The straight. Just hearing the skin. Oh, God. And imagining the pain that snake was in. And ugh.
Well, as I said, all the sound was done in post. So that isn't actually sound. That's just something designed to churn your stomach.
Right. But you think there's no sound when that happens in real life? I bet there's sounds.
Right. But the sound wasn't recorded.
Well, at least they got some tender snake meat that they wouldn't have gotten if they had killed it first.
I, on the other hand, tend to enjoy these Mondo films.
That I haven't really seen much of the oeuvre of these shockumentaries. So I'm kind of a virgin to this as opposed to you. And my sensibilities haven't recovered yet. If I watched a few more, maybe I'd get desensitized and it wouldn't bother me as much.
Well, probably the first one I ever saw was Faces of Death back in the late 80s when that was making the rounds in home video, banned in 43 countries or whatever.
That's not necessarily legitimate film either, though, right?
It's not, but it's the same vein as these. It turns out later that most of that footage was faked.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Well, why do you like it then?
I like learning things, and even presented this way, you are seeing other cultures. And I've just always been fascinated by different cultures and what makes people tick, I guess.
Yeah. But do we know what makes them tick by watching this?
No, we just see one aspect from one perspective, but it's something that we wouldn't otherwise have seen.
Yeah, that's true.
Watching teenagers in Stockholm undress for police as a sign of protest or whatever, I'm not sure exactly what they hope to accomplish if they're just trying to break up through a barricade. If it's going to be any easier unclothed, or unless they're distracting them so the others can get through. I guess that way work.
Oh, yeah, that would work. Yeah, there were parts of this movie that, like I said, weren't even taboos. Teenagers being rebellious. Oh, well, that only happens in Scandinavia? I don't think so.
Feeding swans so they don't migrate south.
Artificial flowers instead of real? Have you heard of such a thing? So there was a little bit of shock, not much awe, and a lot of meh in this documentary.
Well, I wouldn't say that it was shocking that people eat snake.
Or prostitute their grandchildren.
In our culture, that's a little more shocking. But
it's shocking, but it happens a lot more than people think.
But in terms of the snake, I mean, we butcher cattle and eat it, but
Also, we don't, it's not carved up while it's still alive either. I hope.
So Cheryl, given your thoughts on Taboos of the World, how are you going to rate this one using our AIP scale where A is awesome, I is intermediate, and P is pathetic?
I don't think we're allowed to split the ratings on this. If I could, I would give the movie itself an I, where we're seeing all these different, we already argued about this. We see the different rituals in other lands. Not all of them are interesting. A lot of them are very shocking, but I have to take away for the narration. It's so patronizing. It's so condescending. This is basically a circus freak show, and we don't get to meet or know the freaks. We just look at them and go, oh, look at that. So not allowed, since I can't give it 2 grades, I'm just going to stick with the P. What do you think?
Well, as I said, I enjoy Mondo films. Are they good cinema? Oh, absolutely not. Are they exploitative? Definitely. But the somewhat sarcastic narration is kind of a trait in these kind of films. Because what you're seeing is so shocking, I don't think you really want to hear matter-of-factly what's going on. So they try to lighten up things a little with really, really bad jokes.
Maybe that helps. I don't know.
And tongue-in-cheek humor. I can't say that it stands out from any of the other Mondo films that I've seen. They're all pretty much in the same vein. So being average, this one's going to get an I from me.
Well, like I said, I would give it an I with different narration, and I understand your point. This wasn't done for educational purposes. This was done for exploitation, and they're not hiding it. They're not pretending any different. So I can give them credit for honesty, but I didn't like it, and it didn't make me feel good. It made me feel like I needed a shower after watching it. So I'm going to stick with a P.
So this will end our worldwide exploration of the taboos of the world.
Yay.
Until next time, this is the American International Podcast, and I'm Jeff Markin.
And I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And we'll meet you at the drive-in. Follow the American International Podcast on Instagram and Letterboxd at AIP_pod and on Facebook at facebook.com/American International Podcast.
The American International Podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Markin.
A man whose mind is distorted by hatred.
And Cheryl Lightfoot.
A girl hungry for too many things.
The American International Podcast is part of the Pop Culture Entertainment Network.